just tuning in, my name's Stacey Jensen, and I'm the park interpreter here at Sesquicentennial State Park. And we're coming to you live today, and we're going to be doing a program for you that we normally do for school students when they come out here. So I think, should we about get started? Okay, on our camera today, our producer, videographer, cameraman is our park manager, John Wells, so he'll be filming. There's his hand. And also, if you have questions, you're welcome to post them on there, and we'll try and answer questions as best we can also. So this program is geared towards second grade specifically, because in second grade, one of their science standards is learning animal adaptations. And so that's kind of what we're going to cover today. So regardless of what age you are, you'll probably enjoy it, but just, have your, be a kid today and, think like a kid if you're watching. And I hope some of my second graders that were supposed to come this spring are tuning in and going to spend a little time with us. Since you can't be here in person to do the field study this spring, we're kind of bringing it to you today. So, okay, so this program is called Instectigations. And basically, when students come out to the park, and we actually do this a lot in the summer as well for our summer camps, but when children or students come out to the park for our insect program, we take them on an insect safari. And so that's kind of what we're going to do today. And what I'm encouraging you to do, we're going to do all the preparations of the insect safari, and then you guys can go out and do a safari on your own, either outside in your front yard, backyard, or if you don't have an outside, you could probably do this in your house. So we'll talk a little bit about that too, and where you might look to go on an insect safari in your house. So when we prepare for our insect safari, first of all, we have to know what we're looking for, which means we have to know what makes an insect. How are they different from every other animal? Secondly, we have to know where to look. And if you're here on the park, I point out that this park is 1,400 acres. So we don't have time to look everywhere on the park today, so we've got to think about some really good places that we can look here. And I want you to be thinking about some really good places that you can look where you are. And then thirdly, we talk about how to collect safely or observe safely, because that's the most important thing, is being safe on an insect safari. And then lastly, we're going to cover just a couple of our do's and our don'ts when collecting insects, okay, or observing. And then once we get through all that, like I said, I'm going to challenge you to go out on your very own insect safari and see what you can find, whether you observe it or collect it. And if you find something cool, take a picture of it, share it to our Facebook page, share it to our Instagram so everybody can see it. Okay, so normally when we start this program, I'll ask the students, have you ever seen an insect before? Raise your hand. In your whole life. And usually everybody raises their hand, yeah. So maybe you've seen an ant, a bee, a wasp, a butterfly, a grasshopper, all kinds of different things. But how did you know that those were insects? How did you know it was an insect and not some other kind of animal? Maybe because it was really, really small. Maybe because it had wings or antenna. So like I said, the first thing we have to know is what we're looking for. So I am going to use the bee puppet here. And I always tell everybody this, he is super friendly, doesn't sting, very nice.
So is this guy.
Yeah, that one is too, yeah. But one of the first things we look at when we're identifying an insect is how many legs they have. So all insects have 6 legs. And I do not have 6 fingers. I swear this one's empty, see, because I always get weird looks. So all insects have 6 legs, which means if you observe something or catch something today that has more than 6 legs, is it an insect? No, it is not an insect. All insects also have these, antenna. So if you catch something or observe something today that does not have antenna, is it an insect? Nope, it is not an insect. Now most insects have these, wings. And as a matter of fact, most insects have 2 pairs of wings, which means how many wings do they have total? 4. Yeah, but there are exceptions to that rule. Can anybody think of an insect that some have wings, but some do not. What was that? Oh, yes, an ant. Yeah. So raise your hand if you've seen an ant that did not have wings. Yeah, we probably all seen, maybe even today since we've been up. How about raise your hand if you've seen an ant that did have wings? Aha. Okay, so not all insects have, or not all ants have wings, but all ants are insects. So there's always exceptions or kind of little funny rules when we're talking about what makes an insect an insect. Okay, something else. All insects have 3 body parts. They have a head, they have a thorax, and they have an abdomen. So if you catch something today that has less than 3 body parts, is it an insect? Nope, it is not an insect. And then the last thing is, how many of you have ever stepped on an insect before? Okay, I'm sure we all have. And when you stepped on one, you may have heard like a crunching or a cracking sound, kind of like if you stepped on an eggshell or a potato chip. That sound was that animal's exoskeleton. Do we have an exoskeleton? No, we do not have an exoskeleton. We have a skeleton, but ours is on the inside and we're soft on the outside. But an insect is the complete opposite. They have a hard outer shell that protects them, but they're just soft on the inside. There's no bones in there. And you know what that reminds me of? Every time I think about an exoskeleton, I think about an M&M. Yeah, how many of you love to eat M&Ms? You guys, an M&M is a lot like an insect. I hate to tell you that, but think about it. The M&M has a hard outer shell, right? And they're kind of soft on the inside. Yeah. So I'm just saying, next time you eat an M&M, when you bite down on it, that's probably what it'd sound like if you ate an insect. Yeah, I'm just saying. Okay, so just to review real quickly, we said all insects have 6 legs. They have antennae. Most insects have 2 pairs of wings, which we said was 4 wings. They have 3 body parts, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, and they have an exoskeleton. Okay, so now that we know that, I'm getting a lot of assistance today, aren't I? Now that we know that, how many legs does a spider have? 8. This weekend we are talking about insects, and in fact we're talking about doing an insect safari today. And this is a program that we generally do for 2nd grade and also a lot of times in the summer for summer groups. So it's good for all ages. And we've talked about what we're looking for today, so we know what makes an insect an insect. And the next thing we're going to talk about is where to look. And so just a few ideas here. You can look on leaves. And a lot of insects like to hide under leaves. You can look on trees or bushes. You can look under logs. You can look under rocks. Really under anything is a pretty good place to look. Just be careful if you're doing that. You can look on the ground, right? A lot of things are going to be on the ground. And if they're not on the ground, we said most have wings, so don't want to collect. First of all, have an adult with you. But there's a couple things that we don't want to collect. And one of them, my assistant Taylor has been holding up quite a bit. Is it, you want to hold it? Okay, what is this? It's a bee. Why don't we want to collect a bee? Because it will sting you. So when you're doing an insect safari, don't collect anything that stings. That includes bees, wasps, or anything you just think might sting you. But if you see something like a bee or a wasp, there is something that you can do. Observe it. Look at it. See what it's doing. Is it building its home? Is it eating something? Is it carrying something? Is it flying around? Is it pollinating flowers? So there's a lot you can learn just by observing any insect. So that applies to everything. So when you're on your insect safari, you can just observe. You don't have to collect anything at all if you don't want to. Oh, I know. That's our wood bee. Yeah, his name's Bob, and he's my pet wood bee. Okay, can I have that other bug you've got? Or do you want to hold it up? Yeah. Okay, so we don't want to collect anything that stings. Something else we don't want to collect. What kind of ant is that? Can you hold it up so they can see here? Hold it like, yeah, do like that. It's a fire ant. Why don't we want to collect a fire ant? Because it will sting you. So when we do our insect safaris here at the park, we don't collect any ants, and I'll tell you why. because we use these jars right here, and when you get an ant in there, they're really hard to get out. You can't get them out. So we don't collect any ants here on the park. But I encourage you, once again, if you see an ant, what can you do? Observe it, look at it, see what it's doing. Observing an ant colony is fascinating. You can find out all kinds of cool stuff. See what they're doing, what they're carrying, if they're building their home. It's really cool. So if you see ants, definitely take a few minutes to observe them. And then the last thing we don't want to collect, can you guess? Well, yeah, can you guess the third thing we don't want to collect?
Oh yeah, spiders.
Spiders. Okay, so this is a tricky rule. You can collect a spider. I mean, we said they're not insects, but you can still observe them, collect them, and study them, unless they're on a web. Because what can happen to the web when you try and collect the spider? It will break. Yes. And why does a spider build a web? What's it even for? To catch their food. Yeah, so if you knock down their web, there goes lunch. Maybe there goes dinner. It's got to rebuild that whole thing. So if you see a spider on a web, what can you do? Observe it. Look at it. Look at the shape of the web. Look at the size. Look to see if it's on the ground or up in a tree. And a lot of times if you find a spider web, guess what's going to be sitting right in the middle of it? The spider. And you might even find that jar like this. You can use any jar from home that has a lid. Of the things that we want to think about when we're collecting are do, release, insects, where found. So let's say you go out in your backyard and you turn over a rock and you find a gigantic beetle. And you collect it in a jar and you say, yep, sure enough, it's an insect. Then what are you going to do with it? What are they really doing under there? They're hiding from us and they're hiding from other predators. So is that going to make it harder for them to find? Definitely, yes. So don't take any animal from their home. We're being scientists today. So when you collect something, you want to study it, figure out whether or not it's an insect, let it go back in its home. Or observe it and then leave it be. Make sure you're not taking it from their home. And the other do and don't is, do handle insects with care. When you catch an insect, how many legs is it going to have? 6. When you let it go, how many legs should it have? 6. Yeah. So we don't want to accidentally break off a leg or a wing or a body part. So you want to be very careful when you're collecting things and try not to hurt any animal you find. Okay, so we've covered do's and don'ts. We've talked about what we're looking for, where we're going to look, how to collect safely, some of our do's and information is go out on your very own insect safari and observe and or collect as many things as you can find. And then the challenge is to figure out whether or not it's an insect. So when you observe something or when you collect something, see if it has 6 legs, wings, antenna. Can you tell if it has 3 body parts? And determine whether or not it's an insect. Now, if you want to take that a step further, once you figure out, yep, it's an insect, maybe you want to know what kind it is. or maybe you think you know what kind it is, but you want to double check and find out exactly what it is. So there's a lot of online resources out there. There's some great websites for insect identification, but I'm old school with books, and so this is a field guide, and this is the one that I use the most. It doesn't have everything in it, but this is another really good one, and so I'll get my book out and try and identify it like this. And then I think I mentioned this at the very beginning, but if you observe or collect something and you want to share it with us, please take a picture and post it on our Facebook or Instagram and tell us what you think it is, if you figured out what it was. Or just tell us if you think it's an insect or not. And then the last thing we're going to do real quickly is we tried to collect a few things this morning to show you, to try and figure out if they were insects or not. And the first one, and these are in jars, so I know they're going to be a little bit hard to see. There's some tiny, tiny things in that jar. Do you want to hold it up against the whiteboard? Will that help?
That's so gross.
Okay, so these are little guys. We didn't have much luck finding anything big, but we've got something here, a little something here, and a little bigger something there. And so, once again, once you're observing or you've collected something, see if you can count the legs. If it's flying around in your jar, that means it has wings, right? See if you can see the antenna. So this teeny tiny thing right here, that's a tiny, tiny little grasshopper, but it has giant antenna. In fact, I think one of the antenna broke off, but it's got one gigantic antenna. And he's bright green. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera. All right, we've got a couple other bigger things we want to show you just real quick. And I apologize, I know these are probably a little hard to see.
Attacking.
So that's a crane fly. Actually, there's two things in there. And the crane fly is super exciting because one, it's not a giant mosquito. And in fact, they're completely harmless. But the other cool thing is crane flies only have one pair of wings. So remember we talked about there's exceptions to that wing rule. Crane flies are an exception. They only have one pair of wings instead of two. And another insect that you'll find that follows that rule is a fly. Flies only have one pair of wings as well. Now there's something else in there, and it's a daddy longlegs, and man, he is going to be really hard to see. But there is a daddy longlegs in there. Are daddy longlegs insects? No. Another name for a daddy longlegs is a harvestman. And they have 8 legs, they have one body part, and they do not have wings. So that's our daddy longlegs. And then I think we'll show you... Oh, that's okay. Let's skip that one, Taylor. I think, yeah, well, I still think it's going to be hard to see. All right, we're going to do one more, guys. The last one, this is a cicada. And the cicada, this one's dead. And but that way you can see it really well. So cicadas are an insect. You can see their wings. You can kind of see their 3 body parts. This one, I think the antennas have probably broken off of. But cicadas aren't quite out yet. It's got to get a little bit warmer before we start seeing and hearing cicadas. But if you hear a really loud buzzing sound, they do it throughout the day, but it's really, really loud at dusk or, right in the evening. Those are cicadas. And you've maybe also seen the exuvia from a cicada, which is just their shell that they... hatch out of when they go from a larva to an adult. So this is the adult cicada. And you may have found their larva skins on the on trees and stuff like that. All right, so you guys, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for tuning in today and learning a little bit about insects. And I hope that you will take the challenge, go out on your own insect safari, see what you can find. Don't forget to share your pictures if you take one. And thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.